What's up, people? In this video we are going to watch the concept of the pawn on h6 by white, the strengths of half a pawn on h6 with the white pieces in this amazing game between Abdusattorov and Mamedyarov, two very aggressive players. We are seeing that Mamedyarov played g6 in the opening in the dragon defense. So okay, e5 by Abdu, e4, c5, knight f3, g6. Now Abdusattorov open against the dragon. She takes, knight c6, and instead of go for normal Marotzis, Abdusattorov just decided to play the knight on f3 to play a normal dragon, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, bishop c4, bishop b3. Here black have many moves. I employed rook e8 like 4 years ago with an interesting idea of after f3, e6, f4. Here I employed a side move with knight d5, interesting sacrifice. Pawn takes, queen f2, rook e3. This sacrifice bishop d4 and was finally I lost the game, but this idea is interesting. d5 is another possibility by black. But okay, Mamedyarov played d6, going for a normal dragon, f3 by Abdu. And here Mamedyarov play queen a5. Bishop d7 is the normal move. Here h4 is a fashion move and it's the recommendation of the machine, so that's a good move. Because queen d2, who is the most common move, here knight d4 was strong. Bishop d4 and b5, that's the idea. Because rook c8 is very normal, but with the bishop now on f3 and the king on e1 have no so much sense. Because if the same position with the king in long castle and the bishop on c4, rook c8 is the main move, but here with the bishop on b3, rook c8 have no so much sense. And here we can just take here directly and play b5. For example, long castle, a4. This could be a good line for black. But rook c8 here is the main move. Long castle. Here, knight e5 is most employed move. But I played knight d4 many times in the past. Bishop d4, b5. And many opponents fall in this trap of h4, a5. And now I won many games with a4 with black. Because my opponent missed this tactic of take, knight a4, take, rook c4, bishop b3, and knight e4. I won many games in the past employing that idea. But okay, with g4 we can make the same. King b1 here was another normal move. But okay, the same tactic. Knight d5 is here the best move, trading these pieces and reaching this position, which is slightly better for white. And with h4, one of the sharpest line with was h5 with an equal position. But okay, very sharp of course. But okay, now go for the game of Abdusattorov and Mamedyarov. Mamedyarov play queen a5, queen d3 by Abdusattorov. Queen d2 is the most normal move here. But okay, he tried something different, playing queen d3. Now knight d7 by Mamedyarov, normal move, going to d5, going to e5, going to c5, opening the bishop, bishop d5, e6 and bishop b3. Abdusattorov lost these two tempos to provoke e6, and now the d6 pawn is weak. That's the idea of play bishop d5, bishop b3, that now the d6 pawn is weak. And okay, here black have some options. He played knight d5, knight d4 is a possibility, or knight c5 followed by rook d8. That can play in many ways. Knight d5, queen d2, knight d4. That's very typical, trying to push the b pawn. And b5 now. a3 stopping b4. Here, okay, black play rook d8. b4 was another possibility. Here improving the knight. But okay, rook d8 is fine. Long castle, rook b8. And here finally white start the attack, because okay, in a dragon we should attack in the king side and black is going to attack in the queen side. So it's a attacking race. So finally Abdusattorov start the race with f4. Now he trade bishop. Of course, the g7 bishop is a beast. He attacks in the queen side and he defends his own king. So good move trading the bishop, and now starting the attack with h4. That's the typical planning with white against the dragon. Just push the h pawn and win the game. Attack the black king, is checkmate, and win the game. Before, a takes b4, rook b4. Here you can go faster with h5, is another option. For example, if rook d4 which is the best move because queen e1 doesn't work, just knight b1. So rook d4 is the best option. Take, and now queen e1 and queen e5. And it's not easy for white to escape the draw here. Okay, he can still play, but the position is unclear. So king b1 by Abdusattorov was fine until here. The game is going normal. White is slightly better, but okay, the game is going normal. d5 by Mamedyarov, h5 by Abdusattorov, great move. D takes e4, and here comes a key moment of the game. That this is the moment that I want to put more focus, because against the dragon we should play h4, h5. This is more or less clear that always we should play with h4, h5 in the dragon. But once the pawn is on h5, we should decide between play h6. Yes, well, later I'm going to talk about the move h6. But first, the most typical reaction after we place the pawn on h5 is try to open the black king, or taking on g6 directly, or taking on h6 on g6 later, just playing, for example, in this position queen e3, followed by queen e3, and or g4, h5, and try to attack the black king. So we have like three options: or take on g6 to attack the black king, or keep the tension to later attack the black king or play h6 later. But when we keep the tension, used to be more for attack on the king side. But okay, we have these three options: keep the tension, for example. Here we can take because the queen is hanging, but in general we should or keep the tension with the pawn h5, or capture on g6 opening the h file, or play in a more positional style with h6. Three of them are interesting. In this specific position, the machine prefers queen e3. Like I say, with the idea of g4, f5, and the machine say that here white is better attacking the king. For example, rook d1, knight d1, bishop d7, and just g4 followed by f5, and the black king is so exposed. We are going to open one day the h file, and black king have troubles. I think that here white is going to win the game because the machine says +1, and the white play is easier to mate. I think that this is easier for white to play here. So queen e3 is a good way to try to win the game and then attack the black king. But Abdusattorov goes for a more positional style, playing h6. This move could look strange because it's closing the h file, and now it's going to be harder to attack the black king. That's true, but have a pawn on h6 have huge advantages. The first one is that x6 checkmates on the g7 square. That's one of the things. The checkmate on the g7 square. Other tactical profit is the checkmate on the rank. That this is impossible for black to advance this pawn. The e7 hole doesn't work because d7 is covered. So the king is in checkmate in the first rank. And the other idea is that the h7 pawn first is so weak, and when the h7 pawn falls, the pawn is just 2 squares from the promotion. It's not the same. If we capture the h7 pawn with the pawn on h2, that after capture this pawn is like 100 squares from the promotion square. But now when the pawn on h6, if we capture the h7 pawn, this pawn is going to be so close to the promotion. Okay, you can think that all of these things are very difficult to happen because, okay, the queen cannot come to this diagonal to give checkmate, the mates in the rank are impossible, and you don't know why white is going to take the h7 pawn. Okay, all of this is true, but we are thinking in long term. Now all of this is impossible, but during all the game, black should keep an eye to the 8 mate ranks. Black should keep an eye to the queen entering on g7, and especially black should keep an eye to defend this pawn. Because okay, now it can look so far, but if one day this knight lands on g5, this pawn is going to have problems. And the king should be here in checkmate to defend the pawn. So look like white cannot use the h6 pawn, and white have difficulties to attack the king or to attack the h7 pawn. But in the long term, the h6 pawn is going to be very, very annoying. So okay, let's see how continues the game. The machine say that here h6 is bad. The machine say that queen e3 is +1 and h6 is 0-0. But I give a exclamation mark to both moves because there are different styles, and I think that in both moves, white is putting pressure. King f8, queen e3, leaving the attack of the rook. Here I like rook bd4 because trying to keep the position close. Because okay, now black should keep the position as much close as possible, not allowing the white pieces to enter in. For example, not allowing the knight to gain here, not allowing the queen to enter here. So rook bd4 was fine. For example, playing something like that. Queen b6 is another possibility. But okay, rook d1 played by Mamedyarov was a good move. Queen d1, queen b6, again good move. And of course, white here should keep the queens over the board because black king is more exposed and black have an extra pawn. So good move, queen e1. Now e3 was the better move by black. The game is very difficult here. Rook d4 is not bad. Knight takes, rook takes, queen d4. Now this queen is very strong here. It's defending here, attacking the knight. This queen controls everything, so that's a great queen. And normally when our opponent have a great queen, we should trade it. But in this moment, no, because like I said, the black have problems with his king, so we should keep queens over the board. Great move. The most important thing of the h6 pawn is that makes that the black king is always weak. And here, after Mamedyarov and Abdusattorov are playing a good game till here, and here Mamedyarov makes a decisive mistake, making a normal move, but who loses the game in just 3 moves. It's strange that here the position looks fine for black, and the machine says that the position is completely equal. The machine says 0-0, but black just loses the game in 3 moves. Just everything thanks to the h6 pawn. First, I'm going to show you the good responses. Knight e7 is one good possibility, and f5 was another interesting option. That's very hard to play h5 especially, because white idea in this position is first defend the 4 pawn, to later play knight g5, knight h7 like I said, and take this pawn. So f5 forcing the knight to go to g5 dearly, now taking the pawn, leaving, and after knight g5 position is a draw. So f5 was a hard move to make, but works. Or knight e7 is another possibility. Trying to go one day for the h6 pawn and after the h6 pawn, or knight a5, knight h6. So yeah, Mamedyarov here played bishop a6, who looks completely natural, just trying to develop the bishop. The bishop is bad place on c8, so we are just trying to develop the bishop and entering now open diagonal. But this move lost. It's incredible. That's just one normal move, and the position is completely lost for black. Because after now g3, great move by Abdusattorov, followed by knight g5, and white is going to win thanks to the h6 pawn. Bishop c4, take, b3, and just knight b5. Now here, white is simply winning. Mamedyarov tried to find counterplay with knight b4, but doesn't work. I don't explain, but for example, after knight g5, king here, I suppose that maybe queen h1 is very annoying here, and one day the queen is going to enter into the third rank. No, sorry, here white have this specific move. Sorry, I forget, knight e6. That's the another idea was queen h1 is winning too, but knight e6 was stronger. And yes, this king is very unsafe. You take, now the knight is hanging, so. But everything is thanks to the strength of the h6 pawn, because if this pawn wasn't on h6, black can just advance the pawn and everything is fine. So okay, black tried to find counterplay with knight b4, but knight. Okay, here Abdusattorov played 2 inaccurate moves, allowing black to reach a holdable endgame. Here queen h5 was stronger, just going for the endgame. Okay, the king can be here defending the pawn, and now knight e4, and the endgame is winning for black, because black never can king with the king because this pawn is falling. So and play a knight hanging without a king is completely lost, of course. So this could be winning for white. But okay, knight h7 is a good move. King here, but now he should play knight f6 and going for the queen's hanging. That's the best option for white. The problem is that Abdusattorov playing knight g5, thinking that knight g5 is winning too, But here Mamedyarov have this incredible resource with queen a1, king takes knight c2, and knight e1. I suppose that both players watched this idea, but they evaluated that as completely winning for white. And at the first glance, looked like white here is winning. But after king c3, f6, great move, sacrificing the pawn, and knight f3, the position says that the machine says that the position is a draw. Hard to believe, but okay, it's a draw. This was a great defense by. This could be a great defense by black. Instead of that, Mamedyarov evaluated that this game was lost, and he played knight d5, trying to attack. But just h7 and c4. Mamedyarov resigned, so this was a very interesting game who shows really well the strength of have the pawn on h6, who in this specific position was not the best move. Was better to play. Okay, I'm going to go for this position. In this specific position where he played h6, queen e3 was stronger, but I like how Abdusattorov treat this position, putting many problems for Mamedyarov with the move h6. Okay, I hope that you can win many games with this h6 idea against the dragon. But remember that not always we should play h6. Sometimes we should just open the position and attack. I'm not saying that we should play h6 always, but you should keep this idea in mind. Sometimes h6, sometimes open the position, sometimes keep the tension with h5. So okay, now you know all the ways to beat the dragon. So employ in your games and see in the next videos. Bye bye.